The rain hammered against the windows of Rosa's kitchen like angry fists, each drop echoing through the nearly empty restaurant. Rosa wiped down the same table for the third time, her eyes darting to the clock on the wall. 3:30 in the afternoon, and she'd served only 7 customers all day. She walked behind the counter and pulled out a worn notebook, the pages soft from months of anxious handling. The numbers stared back at her, cold and unforgiving. Rent, due in 5 days. Electric bill overdue by 2 weeks. The supplier had already called twice about the unpaid invoice for last month's food delivery. Rosa's hands trembled slightly as she added up the day's earnings. $42. Not even enough to cover the gas bill that arrived yesterday morning, stamped with a final notice warning. 3 years ago, when she first opened this place, everything seemed possible. She'd used her life savings and borrowed money from her sister to transform the old corner building into her dream restaurant. The faded yellow walls had been painted a warm orange. She'd hung pictures of her grandmother's kitchen in Mexico and filled the space with the recipes passed down through 3 generations. Her father would have been proud. He'd always talked about opening a restaurant someday, back when he worked double shifts at the factory to keep food on their table, but cancer took him before he could save enough money. Rosa promised herself she'd make his dream come true, one way or another. Now, as she looked around the empty dining room, she wondered if she'd made a terrible mistake. The lunch rush that used to bring 20 or 30 people had shrunk to a handful of regulars. Mrs. Chen from the flower shop next door still came for her usual Tuesday soup. Old Frank ordered the same chicken plate every Friday, but it wasn't enough, not nearly enough. Rosa's phone buzzed on the counter. Another text from her landlord asking about the rent. She turned the phone face down and walked to the window, watching people hurry past with umbrellas and raised hoods. Nobody even glanced at her restaurant anymore. She thought about calling her sister Carmen, but what would she say? Carmen had already lent her money twice. The last time, Carmen's husband had made it clear he thought Rosa should give up and find a regular job. Maybe he was right. Maybe it was time to admit defeat. The coffee maker gurgled in the corner, the last pot of the day growing bitter and cold. Rosa had stopped making fresh coffee after 2 o'clock to save money. Every bean counted now. She picked up a dish towel and began polishing glasses that were already clean, anything to keep her hands busy while her mind raced. The insurance payment was due next week. Then there was the loan payment to the bank. And somewhere in that pile of papers on her desk was a notice about repairs needed for the old stove that had been acting up. The front door chimed, and Rosa looked up hopefully. But it was just the wind pushing against the loose frame. She'd been meaning to fix that too, but the handyman wanted $80 she didn't have. Outside, the storm was getting worse. Streetlights flickered on early as dark clouds blocked out what little afternoon sun remained. Rosa watched a plastic bag dance across the wet pavement and wondered if that's what her dreams looked like now. Trash blowing in the wind. She pulled out her phone and opened the calculator app, running the numbers one more time. Even if she had a perfect day tomorrow, serving every table twice, she still wouldn't make enough to catch up on all the bills. The math was simple and cruel. Rosa sat down at her favorite table by the window, the one where she used to imagine families gathering for Sunday dinner, where she pictured first dates and birthday celebrations. The red plastic chairs suddenly felt cheap and sad under the harsh fluorescent light. She remembered the day she'd bought those chairs, how excited she'd been to find them on sale. Everything had felt like a sign back then, like the universe was, helping her succeed. The perfect location, the reasonable rent, even the previous owner leaving behind some kitchen equipment. But the universe, it seemed, had other plans. The rain kept falling, and Rosa found herself thinking about her father again. How he'd come home from the factory with tired eyes but always had energy to help her with homework. How he'd described the restaurant he wanted to open, complete with hand-painted menus and a garden where he'd grow his own tomatoes and peppers. "Food brings people together, mija," he used to say. "When you feed someone, you're not just filling their stomach. You're showing them they matter." Rosa had believed that once. She'd poured her heart into every dish, remembering how food had been love in her family. Her grandmother's tamales at Christmas. Her mother's birthday cakes that took all day to make. Her father's weekend breakfasts that filled the house with the smell of eggs and fresh tortillas. But love didn't pay bills. Heart didn't cover rent, and all the family recipes in the world couldn't save a business that nobody wanted to visit. She glanced at the clock again. Almost 4. In better times, she'd start prepping for the dinner crowd about now. But there hadn't been a real dinner crowd in months. Most nights, she'd sit alone in the kitchen, listening to the hum of the refrigerator and wondering how long she could keep the lights on. Rosa stood up and walked to the register, counting the bills in the drawer one more time. $38, and some change. Barely enough for groceries, let alone keeping a business running. The storm outside showed no signs of stopping. If anything, it was getting worse. Rosa decided she might as well close early today. There was no point in staying, open for customers who weren't coming. She could go home, make herself a cup of tea, and figure out what to do next. Maybe it really was time to give up. Maybe 3 years was enough. Maybe some dreams weren't meant to come true. As she reached for the light switch, the front door suddenly opened with a loud jingle. Rosa's heart jumped. She'd forgotten to lock it. A young woman stumbled inside, soaking wet and breathing hard. Behind her, a small boy clutched her hand, his clothes dripping water onto Rosa's freshly mopped floor. The woman looked around nervously, her eyes settling on Rosa with an expression that seemed both hopeful and embarrassed. The boy, maybe 7 or 8 years old, shivered in his thin jacket and stared at the floor. "I'm sorry," the woman said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I know you're probably closing, but do you have any food you were going to throw away? Anything at all? I can pay a little bit." She held out her hand, revealing a few crumpled dollar bills and some coins. Her fingers shook slightly, whether from cold or nerves, Rosa couldn't tell. Rosa looked at the woman, then at the boy, then back at the empty restaurant around them. At that moment, staring at this mother and child who had walked into her failing dream during the worst storm in weeks, Rosa realized that sometimes the universe sends exactly what you need, exactly when you need it, even if you don't know it yet. Rosa stared at the wet mother and child standing in her doorway, their clothes dripping puddles onto her clean floor. The woman's eyes darted around nervously, as if she might bolt at any second. The little boy pressed closer to his mother's side, his small fingers gripping her jacket. "Please," the woman said again, her voice catching slightly. "I know this is probably weird, but we haven't eaten since yesterday morning. I thought maybe you had some bread or something left over that you were going to throw out anyway." Rosa felt her chest tighten. Here she was, worried about her own problems, and this woman was asking for scraps. The few dollars in the woman's hand probably represented everything she had left in the world. Come in," Rosa said quickly, moving toward them. "You're both soaking wet. Here, let me get you some towels." She hurried to the back room and grabbed 2 clean dish towels, then returned to find the woman still standing uncertainly by the door. The boy had started shivering more noticeably, his lips looking a little blue under the harsh restaurant lighting. "Sit down, please," Rosa said, guiding them to the table by the window. "What are your names?" "I'm Lisa," the woman said, accepting the towel gratefully. "This is my son Danny. We're sorry to bother you. I saw your lights on and thought maybe—" "You're not bothering me at all," Rosa interrupted. "When did you eat last?" Lisa wrapped the towel around Danny's shoulders, rubbing his arms to warm him up. "Yesterday. We had some crackers and a can of soup we heated up on a camp stove. We've been staying in our car since—" She stopped, looking embarrassed. Rosa didn't push for details. She could see the exhaustion in Lisa's face, the way her shoulders slumped with the weight of trying to hold everything together. She recognized that look. She'd seen it in her own mirror plenty of times lately. "Well, you're here now," Rosa said firmly, "and I've got plenty of food. Danny, do you like chicken?" The boy nodded eagerly, then looked at his mother as if asking permission to hope. Lisa bit her lip, clearly torn between pride and desperation. "I can pay something," Lisa said again, holding out her crumpled bills. "It's not much, but put that away," Rosa said gently. "I was about to throw out a whole pot of rice anyway. And there's chicken that won't keep until tomorrow. You'd actually be doing me a favor." It wasn't entirely true, but it wasn't entirely a lie either. Rosa always made too much food, hoping for customers who never came, and she did hate wasting it. She walked to the kitchen and started filling 2 plates with her best chicken and rice dish. The smell filled the restaurant as she heated everything up, adding fresh vegetables and a side of warm tortillas. She could hear Lisa and Danny talking, quietly at their table, Lisa's voice soft and reassuring. When Rosa returned with the steaming plates, Danny's eyes went wide. Lisa looked like she might cry. "This is too much," Lisa whispered. "This is a real meal. We can't accept." "You can, and you will," Rosa said, setting the plates down. "I'm Rosa, by the way. This is my restaurant, and right now you two are my customers." Danny dug in immediately, making small, happy sounds as he ate. Lisa took more careful bites, as if she couldn't quite believe it was real. Rosa brought them glasses of fresh water and sat down across from them. "How old are you, Danny?" she asked. 8, he said between bites. "This is really good. Do you put special spices in it?" Rosa smiled. "My grandmother's secret recipe. She taught me when I was about your age. We used to cook together too," Danny said, glancing at his mother. "Before we had to leave our apartment." Lisa's face flushed red. "Danny?" "It's okay," Rosa said quickly. "We don't have to talk about anything you don't want to talk about." But, as they ate, the story came out in small pieces. Lisa had lost her office job 6 months ago when the company downsized. She'd burned through her savings looking for work, trying to keep their apartment. When she finally found a new job, it didn't pay enough to catch up on the back rent. "The eviction notice came 3 weeks ago," Lisa said quietly. "I thought I could figure something out, but..." She shrugged helplessly. "Where are you staying?" Rosa asked. "In our car," Danny answered matter-of-factly. "Mom says it's like camping, but with more driving around." Lisa's eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry. He doesn't understand how bad this is. I keep telling him it's temporary, that Mommy's going to fix everything soon." Rosa's heart ached. She remembered being Danny's age when her own family went through hard times. Her parents had tried to hide their struggles too, but kids always knew more than adults thought they did. "Are you working now?" Rosa asked gently. "I have 2 part-time jobs," Lisa said. "I clean offices at night and work at a grocery store during the day. But with gas money and trying to find safe places to park overnight, and Danny needs to stay in his school district, it's just not enough yet." "What about family? Friends?" Lisa shook her head. "My parents died in a car accident 2 years ago. That's actually how we ended up here. I used their life insurance money to move closer to Danny's dad, thinking maybe we could work things out. But he..." She glanced at Danny, who was still focused on his food. "Let's just say it didn't work out." Rosa nodded, understanding without needing details. She'd seen enough of life to know that sometimes the people who should help you were the ones who hurt you most. "Well," Rosa said, standing up, "let me get you some dessert. I made flan yesterday and I can't eat it all myself." She returned from the kitchen with 2 generous portions of flan and a cup of coffee for Lisa. Danny's face lit up at the sweet custard, and even Lisa smiled as she tasted it. "This is incredible," Lisa said. "I haven't had flan since before Danny was born. My neighbor used to make it for special occasions." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the rain against the windows. The storm seemed to be getting worse, but inside the restaurant felt warm and safe. Rosa found herself thinking about her father again, about his belief that food brought people together. "The rain's not letting up," Rosa observed, looking outside. Lisa's face grew worried. "We should probably go. I don't want to take up your table all evening." "Where will you go in this storm?" Rosa asked. "There's a parking garage downtown that's usually safe," Lisa said. "Danny can do his homework in the back seat and we'll be dry." Rosa looked at this woman who was trying so hard to be strong for her son, who was working 2 jobs and still couldn't get ahead, who was grateful for restaurant scraps and apologized for taking up space. She thought about her own troubles, her unpaid bills and empty restaurant. Then she thought about her father's words. When you feed someone, you're showing them they matter. I have a better idea, Rosa said, surprising herself with the words. How would you like a job? Lisa looked up sharply. What? I need help here, Rosa continued, the idea forming as she spoke. Someone to help with prep work, maybe some cleaning. The pay isn't much, but there's a small apartment upstairs that I've been using for storage. It's not fancy, but it has running, water and heat. Lisa stared at her in shock. Are you serious? Dead serious, Rosa said. I can't afford much, but I can afford something. And honestly, I could use the help. This place is too much for one person. Danny looked up from his flan, sensing something important was happening. Lisa's hands shook as she set down her spoon. I don't know what to say, she whispered. Say yes, Rosa said simply. Sometimes we all need a little help. And sometimes, helping others helps us too. Outside, thunder rumbled across the sky, but inside the little restaurant, 3 people sat around a table sharing flan and the possibility of hope. The next morning, Rosa arrived at the restaurant earlier than usual, her stomach churning with nervous energy. Had she made the right decision? Offering Lisa a job and a place to stay seemed like the obvious thing to do last night, but in the cold light of dawn, reality was setting in. She could barely afford to keep the lights on, let alone pay another person. The apartment upstairs hadn't been cleaned in months and was filled with boxes of old supplies and broken equipment. And what did she really know about Lisa anyway? Rosa unlocked the front door and flipped on the lights, trying to push away her doubts. At exactly 8 o'clock, she heard a soft knock. Through the glass, she could see Lisa and Danny waiting outside, both looking nervous but clean. Lisa had somehow managed to find fresh clothes for both of them. Good morning, Lisa said as Rosa let them in. I wasn't sure if you'd changed your mind. I mean, last night was pretty crazy and you don't really know us. I haven't changed my mind, Rosa said, though her voice sounded less confident than she wanted. Are you ready to see the apartment? They climbed the narrow stairs behind the kitchen, Danny's small feet echoing on each step. Rosa opened the door to reveal a cluttered mess of cardboard boxes, old chairs, and restaurant equipment that hadn't worked in years. Oh, Lisa said quietly, surveying the chaos. I know it looks bad, Rosa said quickly. But underneath all this stuff, it's actually not terrible. There's a bathroom, a small kitchen area, and 2 rooms. The windows face east, so you get morning light. Danny ran to one of the windows and pressed his nose against the glass. Look, Mom, you can see the whole street from up here. Lisa walked around slowly, lifting the corner of a dusty tarp to peek at what was underneath. This is really generous of you, Rosa, but I can't help feeling like I'm taking advantage. You're not, Rosa said firmly. I meant what I said about needing help. This place has been falling apart because I'm trying to do everything myself. She wasn't lying. The restaurant did need work. The floor hadn't been properly mopped in weeks, the windows were streaky. The storage areas were disorganized. She'd been cutting corners everywhere just to save time and money. What kind of help do you need? Lisa asked. Everything, Rosa laughed, but it came out a little bitter. Food prep, cleaning, organizing, maybe some help with customers during busy times. Though to be honest, busy times aren't very busy anymore. Lisa nodded thoughtfully. What happened? I mean, the food is amazing. This should be packed. Rosa shrugged. Competition, maybe. There's a new chain restaurant that opened 2 blocks away. Cheaper prices, faster service. Plus, people don't seem to want home-cooked food anymore. They want apps and delivery and meals that come in 30 seconds. That's not true. Danny piped up from the window. I like food that tastes like someone made it just for me. Both women smiled at that. Kids had a way of cutting straight to the truth. Well, Lisa said, rolling up her sleeves. If you're willing to take a chance on us, we're willing to work hard. Where do we start? They spent the morning clearing out the apartment. Box after box of old menus, broken appliances, and supplies that Rosa had been meaning to throw away for months. Danny helped by carrying smaller items and sorting through boxes of mismatched dishes and silverware. Why do you have so many coffee cups? Danny asked, holding up a chipped mug. People used to steal them, Rosa explained. I kept buying new ones thinking customers would stop taking them. Finally gave Up and switched to paper cups. Lisa paused in her sorting. People were stealing from you? Small stuff, mostly. Coffee cups, salt shakers, sometimes the little flower vases I used to put on each table. It probably wasn't even on purpose half the time, but it added up. That's terrible, Lisa said. No wonder you stopped trusting people. Rosa hadn't thought about it that way, but Lisa was right. Somewhere along the line, she'd stopped expecting the best from people. She'd stopped putting out the nice tablecloths because they got stained. Stopped playing music because the sound system was too expensive to replace when it broke. Stopped trying to make the place feel special because special things seemed to disappear or break. By lunchtime, they'd cleared enough space to reveal a surprisingly decent little apartment. The carpet was worn but clean underneath all the boxes. The kitchen was tiny but functional. The bathroom needed new paint, but the plumbing worked. It's perfect, Lisa said, and she actually seemed to mean it. Danny had claimed the smaller room as his bedroom, already arranging his few belongings on the windowsill. He'd pulled out a notebook and some colored pencils and was drawing at a small table they'd uncovered. "What are you working on?" Rosa asked, looking over his shoulder. "A picture of your restaurant," Danny said, "but with lots of people in it, and flowers on the tables, and maybe some balloons." Rosa felt a lump in her throat. When was the last time anyone had seen her restaurant as a place worth decorating? Worth celebrating? "Hey, Rosa," Lisa called from the kitchen area. "The afternoon. Prep won't do itself. Want to show me what you need help with?" They went downstairs and Rosa began teaching Lisa how to prepare the vegetables for the daily specials. Lisa's knife skills were basic, but she was careful and asked good questions. She noticed things too, like how Rosa was using twice as much oil as necessary because the old pans were warped, and how the walk-in cooler was organized in a way that made everything take longer to find. "You know," Lisa said as she chopped onions, "I used to work in an office. I'm pretty good with organization and finding ways to make things more efficient." "What kind of office?" Rosa asked. "Insurance company. I handled customer accounts, did some bookkeeping, managed schedules. It wasn't glamorous, but I learned a lot about running operations." Rosa stopped chopping. "You know about bookkeeping?" "Some." "Why?" Rosa gestured helplessly at the disaster of papers on her desk. "I've been doing my own books since I opened. I think I'm doing it wrong. Actually, I know I'm doing it wrong, I just can't afford an accountant." Lisa wiped her hands and walked over to the desk. She picked up a few receipts and invoices, scanning them quickly. "Rosa, when did you last do inventory? What do you mean?" "Count everything you have in stock. Match it against what you've ordered and what you've sold." Rosa felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment. I order stuff when I run out. I count the money at the end of each day. That's bookkeeping, right?" Lisa's expression was gentle but concerned. "Oh, honey, no. That's just basic cash management. Real bookkeeping tracks everything: costs, profits, taxes, inventory, trends. Without it, you have no idea if you're actually making money or just treading water." "I think I've been drowning," Rosa admitted quietly. "Well," Lisa said, returning to her onions. "Lucky for you, I have some free time in the evenings. We can figure this out together." As the afternoon wore on, something interesting started happening. Lisa's presence in the restaurant seemed to change the whole atmosphere. She smiled at the few customers who came in, remembered their orders, asked about their days. She noticed when someone looked confused about the menu and offered helpful suggestions. When Mrs. Chen came in for her usual soup, Lisa greeted her warmly and complimented her flower arrangement in the shop next door. When old Frank arrived for his weekly chicken plate, Lisa had it ready before he even sat down, having watched Rosa prepare it the same way every Friday. "You have a regular customer routine down to a science," Lisa observed as Frank left with a satisfied smile. "But I don't think you realize how much people appreciate the personal touch." "What do you mean?" "Frank told me this is the only place in town where someone knows his name and his order. Mrs. Chen said you always ask about her arthritis and make sure her soup isn't too hot. These people don't just come here for food, Rosa. They come here because you make them feel cared for." Rosa had never thought about it that way. To her, remembering people's orders and asking about their lives was just being polite. But maybe it was more than that. Maybe it was exactly what her father had been talking about all those years ago. As closing time approached, Rosa realized something remarkable had happened. For the first time in months, she wasn't dreading the end of the day. The restaurant felt alive again, filled with conversation and the sounds of productive work. Danny had finished his homework and was helping wipe down tables, humming quietly to himself. Lisa was organizing the receipts from the day into neat piles, already starting to make sense of Rosa's chaotic record-keeping. "Thank you," Rosa said suddenly. "Both of you. I don't know why you walked into my restaurant last night, but I'm really glad you did." Lisa looked up from the paperwork and smiled. "Sometimes the best things happen when you least expect them. Besides, I think we're going to make a good team." Looking around at her clean, organized restaurant with two new people who actually seemed to care about it, Rosa was beginning to think Lisa might be right. 2 weeks after Lisa and Danny moved into the apartment upstairs, Rosa's kitchen was starting to feel like a completely different place. The morning rush, which used to mean maybe 3 customers grabbing coffee and pastries, had grown to include a steady stream of people who seemed genuinely happy to be there. Rosa stood behind the counter, watching Lisa work the dining room with an ease that amazed her. Lisa remembered not just what people ordered, but personal details about their lives. She knew that Janet from the hair salon took her coffee with extra cream because she was trying to gain weight after being sick. She remembered that Tony, the construction worker, was saving up for his daughter's wedding and always asked if there were any day-old pastries he could get at a discount. "You're a natural at this," Rosa told Lisa during a brief lull between customers. Lisa wiped down a table and smiled. "I like people, I always have. The office job paid better, but I spent most of my day staring at a computer screen. This feels more real, you know?" Danny had become the restaurant's unofficial mascot. After school, he'd do his homework at the corner table, occasionally helping customers who looked confused about the menu. His drawings now covered one entire wall, a colorful collection of pictures showing the restaurant full of happy families and friends. "Danny," Rosa called as she prepped vegetables for the lunch special. "What's that new drawing you're working on?" "It's a surprise," Danny said, hunching over his paper protectively. "But it's for the restaurant, to make more people want to come. Eat here." Rosa exchanged a look with Lisa. Danny had been full of ideas lately about how to improve the business. Most of them involved adding things like a playground or a pet store inside the restaurant. But his enthusiasm was infectious. The lunch crowd was bigger than usual that day. Word seemed to be spreading about the changes at Rosa's kitchen. People were noticing that the service was friendlier, the place was cleaner, and somehow the food tasted even better than before. "Rosa," called out Mike, a regular customer who owned the auto repair shop down the street, "this sandwich is incredible. Did you change something about the bread?" "Same recipe as always," Rosa replied, but she was pleased. The truth was, everything tasted better when you had help in the kitchen and weren't stressed about doing everything yourself. As Mike was paying his bill, he pulled out his phone. "Do you mind if I take a picture of my food? I want to post it online. My brother's always looking for good places to eat when he's in town." "Of course," Lisa said before Rosa could answer. "And if he mentions this post when he comes in, we'll give him a free dessert." Rosa looked at Lisa in surprise. They'd never done social media promotions before, but Mike's face lit up with the idea. "Really? That's awesome. He'll love that." Mike snapped a quick photo of his half-eaten sandwich and started typing on his phone. "This place is seriously underrated. You guys should be packed every day." After Mike left, Rosa turned to Lisa. "Free dessert promotion?" "Trust me," Lisa said. "Word of mouth is the best advertising, and social media makes word of mouth travel faster. Plus, one free piece of flan costs us maybe $2 but could bring in a customer who spends 20. Rosa nodded slowly. It made sense, though it was the kind of business thinking she'd never been good at. "How do you know all this stuff?" "The insurance company I worked for was small. Everyone had to wear multiple hats. I ended up helping with marketing campaigns, customer retention programs, all sorts of things." Lisa paused, looking thoughtful. "Actually, I've been thinking about some other ideas too, if you're interested." Like what? Well, have you ever thought about offering catering? I bet lots of local businesses would love to have lunch brought in from a real restaurant, instead of the same old sandwich chains. Rosa had actually thought about catering before, but it seemed overwhelming when she was running everything by herself. I wouldn't even know where to start. I could help with that. Make some calls, put together packages, handle the logistics. We'd probably need to invest in some better containers and maybe a warming tray, but the profit margins on catering are usually pretty good. Before Rosa could respond, the front door opened and a woman she didn't recognize walked in. She was well-dressed and carrying a professional-looking camera. "Excuse me," the woman said, approaching the counter. "I'm Beth Rodriguez from the city paper. I got a tip about this place from someone who shared a photo on social media. Would you mind if I tried your lunch special and maybe asked you a few questions?" Rosa felt her heart skip a beat. A reporter? Here? Questions about what? I write about local businesses, especially family-owned restaurants that are doing interesting things. I heard you recently hired someone who was going through a tough time, and that the whole atmosphere here has changed. Is that true? Rosa glanced at Lisa, who was standing very still by the coffee machine. Danny had looked up from his homework, his eyes wide with excitement. "We're just trying to serve good food and treat people well," Rosa said carefully. "Nothing fancy. Sometimes the simple things are the most important," Beth said with a warm smile. "Would it be okay if I ordered something and just observed for a while? I promise I won't bother your customers." Lisa stepped forward. "Of course. Today's special is chicken with rice and vegetables, or we have excellent sandwiches. Rosa makes everything fresh." For the next hour, Beth sat at a table near the window, eating her lunch and occasionally taking notes. Rosa tried to act normal, but she felt self-conscious about every move she made. What if the reporter wrote something bad? What if she said the food was terrible or the place was run down? But as Rosa watched Beth interact with other customers, she realized the reporter was seeing exactly what Mike and the other regulars had been talking about. She saw Lisa remember that Mrs. Chen preferred her soup in a mug instead of a bowl. She saw Danny help an elderly man read the menu when he forgot his glasses. She saw the way Rosa personally brought each plate to the table and asked how everything tasted. When Beth was ready to leave, she approached the counter again. "This was wonderful, really. The food is delicious, but more than that, this place has something you can't fake." "What's that?" Rosa asked. "Heart. You can tell that everyone here actually cares about what they're doing and who they're serving. That's becoming rare." After Beth left, Rosa sank into a chair, feeling drained. What if she writes something terrible? "She won't," Lisa said confidently. "Did you see her face when she was eating? She loved everything about this place." Danny bounced over to their table, unable to contain his excitement any longer. "Can I show you my surprise now? Please?" He ran to get his latest drawing and carefully laid it on the table. It was a hand-drawn flyer with colorful borders and neat lettering that read, "Rosa's Kitchen, where food tastes like love. Try our famous chicken and rice. Kid-friendly. Best coffee in town." At the bottom, he'd drawn a picture of the three of them standing in front of the restaurant, all smiling. "Danny," Rosa whispered, her eyes filling with tears. "This is beautiful. We could make copies and put them up around town," Danny said eagerly. "Lisa taught me about marketing. She said people need to know about good things so they can find them." Rosa looked at Lisa, who was beaming with pride at Danny's creation. "You taught him about marketing?" He asked why some restaurants were always busy and others weren't. I explained that sometimes great places just need help letting people know they exist. That evening, after they'd closed and cleaned up, Rosa sat upstairs with Lisa and Danny, sharing a late dinner of leftover chicken and rice. The apartment was starting to feel cozy now, with Lisa's touches making it more like a real home. Danny's drawings were taped to the refrigerator, and Lisa had brought plants from somewhere to put on the windowsills. "Lisa," Rosa said suddenly, "can I ask you something personal?" "Sure." "When you walked in here that first night in the rain, asking for leftover food, did you think this would happen? Did you imagine we'd end up working together like this?" Lisa was quiet for a moment, twirling rice around her fork. Honestly, I was just trying to get through one more day. I had no plan beyond finding something for Danny to eat and a safe place to sleep. But when you invited us to sit down, when you brought us real food instead of scraps, she looked up at Rosa. I remembered what it felt like to be treated like a person instead of a problem. You were never a problem, Rosa said softly. I felt like one. When you lose your job and your home, when you're living in your car with a kid, you start to feel invisible, like you don't matter anymore. Lisa's voice grew stronger. But you saw us, really saw us. And you didn't just give us food, you gave us dignity. Danny, who had been listening quietly, reached over and patted Rosa's hand. You saved us, he said simply. And now we're saving your restaurant. Rosa laughed through her tears. Is that what we're doing? Definitely, Danny said, with the certainty that only 8-year-olds possessed. We're a team now. Teams save each other. Looking around at her little makeshift family sharing dinner in the apartment above her father's dream restaurant, Rosa realized that Danny was absolutely right. They were saving each other, one meal at a time. 6 months later, Rosa stood in her bustling restaurant at 7 in the morning, watching the breakfast crowd that had become as reliable as sunrise. The article in the city paper had changed everything. Beth Rodriguez had written a beautiful piece about Rosa's kitchen, calling it a neighborhood gem where kindness is the secret ingredient. The morning after the article came out, Rosa had arrived to find a line of people waiting outside her door. At first she'd panicked, thinking something was wrong, but then she realized they were all holding copies of the newspaper, wanting to try the restaurant that had made them smile while reading the morning news. Rosa, table 6 needs more coffee, Lisa called out as she balanced 3 plates on her arms with the skill of someone who'd found her true calling. And the gentleman at table 2 wants to know if we cater business meetings. Rosa poured fresh coffee and smiled. They'd been getting catering requests almost daily since Lisa had started making calls to local offices. What began as lunch deliveries to a few small businesses had grown into wedding receptions, birthday parties, and corporate events. Danny, now 9, and somehow even more confident than before, was manning his usual post at the corner table. But instead of just doing homework, he was carefully writing in a spiral notebook that had become his business idea journal. What's the latest plan, Danny? Rosa asked, bringing him a glass of orange juice. I'm designing loyalty cards, Danny said seriously, showing her a hand-drawn card with stamps shaped like little hearts. Mrs. Chen told me that big coffee shops give you a free drink after you buy 10. We should do that too, but with meals. Lisa overheard and paused in her serving. That's actually brilliant, Danny. Customer retention programs really work. See? Danny beamed. I told you I was good at marketing. The lunch rush was even busier than breakfast. Rosa had hired 2 part-time servers to help Lisa, but they were still running around constantly. The kitchen, which used to feel too big for just Rosa, now buzzed with the activity of 3 cooks working in harmony. Order up, Rosa called, sliding 2 plates across the pass. Table 12, chicken special and the soup combo. Got it, called Anna, one of the new servers. And table 15 wants to know if you can make the rice dish without onions for their daughter. Of course, Rosa replied, already starting a fresh portion. She'd learned that accommodating special requests wasn't a burden. It was what kept families coming back week after week. As the lunch crowd thinned out, Rosa noticed a familiar face at table by the window. It was Mike from the auto shop, but he wasn't alone. He was with an older man who looked around the restaurant with obvious curiosity. That must be his brother, Lisa whispered to Rosa. The one from the social media post, remember? We promised him free dessert. Rosa nodded and walked over to their table with 2 slices of fresh flan. Mike, good to see you again. And you must be the brother we've heard about. This is Carlos, Mike said, grinning. I've been telling him about this place for months. He finally made it down from Sacramento. Carlos looked up at Rosa with kind eyes. Mike wasn't exaggerating. This food is incredible. And the atmosphere here, it reminds me of my grandmother's house in Mexico. Everyone feels like family. That's exactly what we're going for, Rosa said, setting down the dessert plates. Family. After the brothers left, Rosa found herself thinking about that word. Family. When she'd first opened the restaurant, she'd imagined it filled with families celebrating birthdays and anniversaries. But she'd never imagined that she'd create her own family in the process. Lisa approached the counter with the day's receipts, a ritual that had become as natural as breathing. We're up 20% from last month, she said, but her voice was careful, like she had something else on her mind. What is it? Rosa asked. You look worried. Not worried, exactly, but I got a phone call today. Lisa paused, glancing around, to make sure they had privacy. Remember the insurance company I used to work for? They want me to come back. The position is in their corporate office with a significant raise and full benefits. Rosa felt her heart sink, but she tried to keep her expression neutral. That's wonderful news, you should be proud. Should I? Lisa asked. I mean, it's more money than I ever thought I'd make. Danny and I could get a real house, maybe even start saving for his college fund, but I love what we've built here. This place feels more like home than anywhere I've ever lived, and Danny is so happy. He's got friends at school now, he's confident, he's learned so much about business and working with people. Rosa looked over at Danny, who was now helping Anna fold napkins while telling her about his loyalty card idea. He'd grown so much in the past 6 months, not just physically but in every way that mattered. Lisa, Rosa said carefully, you have to do what's best for you and Danny. I'll be grateful forever for what you've done here, but I won't guilt you into staying. What if there was another option? Lisa asked quietly. What do you mean? Lisa took a deep breath. What if we became partners? Real partners. I've been looking at the books, and with the catering business growing and the steady customers we have now, this place could support 2 families. I could invest some of my savings, we could expand the catering operation, maybe even open for dinner service. Rosa stared at her in shock. Partners? Think about it, Lisa continued, her words coming faster now. You know the food and the heart of this place better than anyone. I know the business side, the marketing, the operations. Together we could turn Rosa's kitchen into something bigger than either of us could create alone. Before Rosa could respond, Danny appeared at their side, with his notebook clutched in his hands. Are you talking about the expansion plans? He asked excitedly. Danny, Lisa warned, we talked about this being grown-up conversation time. But I have ideas too, Danny insisted. What if we started cooking classes? People always ask Rosa how she makes the chicken taste so good. We could teach them on Sunday afternoons when we're usually closed anyway. Rosa looked from Danny to Lisa and felt something shift inside her chest. Cooking classes? And we could sell Rosa's famous salsa in jars, Danny continued, warming to his theme. And maybe t-shirts with the restaurant logo. And what about delivery? Lots of people want to eat our food at home. Lisa laughed. He's been working on a whole business plan in that notebook. Show her, Danny. Danny opened his notebook to reveal pages of careful writing and drawings. Plans for expanding the menu, ideas for special events, even sketches of what the restaurant could look like with more tables. This is incredible, Rosa said, flipping through the pages. Danny, when did you become such a businessman? Lisa taught me, he said proudly. She says good businesses solve problems for people. Our problem is that we're too small for all the people who want to eat here. Rosa sat down heavily in the nearest chair, overwhelmed by the possibilities spinning through her mind. 6 months ago, she'd been ready to close the restaurant and give up on her father's dream. Now Lisa and Danny were talking about expansion, partnerships, and solving problems she'd never even considered. I need to think about this, Rosa said finally. Of course, Lisa replied. It's a big decision. But Rosa, you should know that whether we're partners or not, Danny and I aren't going anywhere. This is our home now, you're our family. That evening, after the restaurant was closed and cleaned, Rosa sat alone in the dining room with her father's old photograph on the wall behind her. She'd put it up the week after Lisa and Danny moved in, finally ready to honor his memory and the space they'd created together. What would you do, Papa? She asked the picture softly. As if in answer, Danny's voice drifted down from upstairs where he was getting ready for bed. He was singing a song he'd made up about the restaurant. Something about chicken and rice and people being nice. Lisa appeared at the bottom of the stairs. He does that every night now. His own little theme song for this place, Lisa, Rosa said, standing up and walking to her. Yes. Yes to what? Yes to being partners. Yes to expanding. Yes to cooking classes and salsa jars and whatever other crazy ideas Danny comes up with. Rosa felt tears starting in her eyes. My father always said that food brings people together, but you and Danny taught me that sometimes people bring food together too. Lisa hugged her tightly. We're really going to do this? We already did it, Rosa laughed through her tears. We just made it official. Upstairs, Danny's singing got louder and Rosa realized he was right. They weren't just running a restaurant anymore, they were home,